Jimbo Slice and everything nice. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm alive, pal. I'm alive. Another good day today.
Attaboy.
What's really got me excited more than anything is my knee.
Oh, yeah? Starting to feel good?
I noticed myself today. I hadn't been for three weeks to the doctor, and I went. I saw her. She spent about 20 minutes on my knee. She's an ART, which is one above a chiropractor.
Okay.
And I mean, she's a genius. She's the one that when I went the first time with my other knee years ago, she looked at me and she checked my knee and she said, "Have you done anything to your foot?" And I've told you this story about her finding a bone out of place in my foot. But no, my knee's on the mend, and it was really cool because I noticed I went down in the basement here today, and I ran up the stairs, not ran, but shuffled up one after the other.
Yeah.
And I got up about 10 steps of the 14, and I sort of just froze. I thought, "Oh my God, I'm actually like the mobility of my knee, the mechanics, it's working." It was really cool. And this afternoon here, we had to go out and do a couple of errands, and I was out and in the truck. And when I get out now, I don't have to steady myself. I can get out to get gas. I just step out and go. I'm not worried about my knee folding up. So it took a long time to heal up. It's not right yet, but it's coming. So that's really exciting for me. And I don't know whether everybody saw on Facebook that I posted yesterday. I had to go out in the morning, and I go out and I'm sitting beside the river watching a family of otters. They're sliding down the hill. They're fighting. There's 5 of them rolling around in a ball on the ice. It was like watching kids. And then they'd race over to the fish they had, and they'd all be holding at it, gnawing on it. The fish would hit the ground. They'd be gone again. It was incredible. And then I thought, wow, what a great day. And we go down to do groceries. And I'm driving along, and I thought, oh, my God, look. I said to Tammy, there's a snowy owl. And as I got closer to it, I looked at her. I said, that's not an owl. And it was an albino hawk. Like you see a hawk sitting on a pole, and it's just pure white.
Wow.
It was really, really cool to see. I had about 10 people tell me, go buy a lottery ticket. Go buy a lottery ticket. Yeah. So Tammy spends her $2 a week. It's what she does on tickets. So she bought one, and we won $50.
Incredible. What a great story.
Yeah. No, it was funny. But it's a good week. It's a good week.
I'll tell you, speaking of good, we have lots of great guests that are joining us. Right off the bat, I see Christina's with us on behalf of myself and the rest of us here at CFN. Christina, happy birthday. I hope you enjoy your 19th birthday like the rest of us did. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Charles is in the house. Richard Leger, how you doing, my friend? Fernando, how you doing? You made it, buddy. Lloyd's here. David's here. And you know what, guys? In the background, in the lobby, I'm going to get Jim to do his best when it comes to introducing who it is that we're going to be talking to, because I can't think of anybody better than yourself, Jim. Who is it we're speaking with tonight?
Well, we're going to talk to a guy that I first met about a half a lifetime ago at a place called KTL. It was Ken's Tackle Limited in Toronto at their ice fishing extravaganza and their booking show in the fall that they have. And there was a new couple, not really new, but it was new. And they had this was when ice fishing was just starting to get going and becoming modern, like I've explained to you so many times.
Yeah.
And I got to meet this guy in the Clam Corporation booth. And there was a guy there called Noel Vick, who runs a big company in the U.S. now called Traditions Media. But there was another guy that I met there, and he's a guy that they told me or referred to me as being the godfather of ice fishing. And there's no ifs, ands, ors, or buts. And I spent a lot of time with him. And then for several years after that, he used to find his way across. He'd fish all across the American side through New York and that. And then he'd hop across the border and come up and fish with me. And the guy gave me a schooling in ice fishing. Just watching him, you just learned what to do and how to do it. And that guy's none other than Mr. Dave GENZ, and he's still at it. I still watch his videos. I check up on him. It's just incredible what he's accomplished. Like he's like what Kevin Van Dam is to bass fishing. Dave GENZ is more to ice fishing because he's done it forever.
So this is exactly why I called on you to introduce him, because, buddy, you nailed it. I couldn't have said it better myself. Dave GENZ, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you guys for that introduction. I mean, my chest just got bigger, I think, listening to all that.
Well, that's what we do here. It's how we roll, Dave. But Jim did say it best. And, what was really cool, because reading through some of, the literature that I have the luxury of, because there is so much, as Jim has mentioned, all over the internet in regards to you. But what is really cool is, and I say this with all due respect, but, a true pioneer like yourself, to be able to see what you've done and accomplished and have others sort of grow up into the industry, grow up with the passion for hardwater angling, and relish in the fact that, the gentleman who pioneered this is still around, and he's still pioneering today.
Well, we're still out there fishing as many times as I can, and a lot of times it's not inventing a new idea; it's recognizing one. When you're out there and you see something and you go, "Wow, that's going to work." And yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I plan on keep doing it as long as I can.
Amen, brother. I couldn't have said it now. You know what? We had the privilege of talking before coming on live tonight, and obviously there are three main areas of hardwater angling that I would say you have really revolutionized. They've revolutionized along with you, but when it comes specifically to hardwater angling, the philosophy of fish and how to pursue fish, and making sure that you absorb new philosophies and try and work out some of the kinks. As Jim always says, stop doing what doesn't work. And when it comes to reading maps and what have you, you have revolutionized that. Of course, we can't say enough about the mobility factor when it comes to hardwater, with the fish trap and what you've done with clam. It makes our experience out on the hardwater that much more enjoyable. And then, of course, last but not least, electronics. Typically pre-GENZ era, all of that stuff was stuck to the boat, and we went out on the hardwater and fished blindly. But you brought Fekler to all of us hardwater anglers and the flasher concept. And man, I'll let Jim speak on it, because it certainly has made hardwater angling far more enjoyable than ever watching a flasher.
Yeah, Dave, that was one of the things that Dave really taught me and showed me and explained to me a lot about the electronics. I had them, but having somebody that really, I really feel that still today, I can get as much out of a flasher as anybody can get out of anything else. Once you learn to read it, Dave will often say he's fishing for red marks, and that's the whole thing. It's real time. And I know they have, they have all the live scope and all this stuff and everything else now, and it's cool. But you can learn to interpret that off a flasher. Yeah. It's, Dave, you still fish with a flasher today.
You bet. I constantly have that on, and I have the live scope, and, it has its place. But when it comes down to, it's playing a video game. It's with live players on the other end. And once you teach the young people that too, they're into it. Once they see what's going on, what they're doing, instead of watching a bobber or running after a tip up, they get more enthusiastic if they're using that Vexilar flasher.
Well, I mean, Dave, how many times have you heard it said? You met my girls when they were little. They're both, I've got 9 grandkids now. They're both nurses, all kinds of stuff like that. When I used to bring them out on the lake, they would. We only had the one unit, which was an FL8, the first one you gave me years ago when you were up here, and they would fight over who was going to watch the fish. They would absolutely fight over it. Like they'd be rolling across the ice with the fur flying to see who was gonna, who was going to get the flasher to watch, because what kids are like today, man. It's just like a video game to them. Yeah, and they sit and watch it. That's why they get the interest. And we've talked about this with Scottie here a million times, Dave. Ice fishing is not 5 guys and a case of beer and a wooden hut anymore. It's a whole different deal. Yeah,
it's definitely it's definitely not. And it's amazing how it's turned into winter camping now with all these ice castle fish houses that we have down down here. I don't know if that trend has got to Lake Simcoe yet or not, but
I'm sure it's close.
It's there can be a lot of houses out there, and they're barbecuing out on the ice and enjoying winter instead of complaining about the winter, and having the flash and running around. They actually get to catch some fish too. So that's the good part. You got to go out and be successful. You're not going to keep doing it if you're not.
Yeah, something that's really neat too that I've watched happen, and you've probably seen it even more where you are, Dave, and earlier, is the amount of people now that are going on destination trips in the winter. Yeah. Like, we're not driving to go somewhere special in the summer. Now we're driving in the winter for 500 or 800 or 1,000 miles to ice fish for 3 or 4 days at a really nice spot, somewhere with lots of fish that you don't usually get the fish. And it wasn't like that here five years ago. I know guys now that will drive. I know guys that drive to Lake of the Woods to ice fish every winter.
Yeah, I just drove 600 miles so far today. So
yeah,
and we're jokingly, one of the guys from Nebraska that's on this trip, he named this the drop kick bluegill trek, and we got every state that we're going to, we have to catch a bluegill on a drop kick, and that's our goal. And we got South Dakota, Wyoming, Utah, and Idaho on our list.
And what's really cool, Jim, because I've seen it with you, and I was talking about this to Dave before we went live, and Dave's been doing this a long time, much like yourself, Jim. And what I really get set back and I get in awe with, and it's inspiring to me, and especially to some of our younger anglers that are in the audience, the excitement. You guys have got a lot of years behind you when it comes to fishing. No offense, but it's true. And to see the excitement, I asked Dave where you're heading. He said, well, somewhere new, which is really cool. It's Cascade Lake or Lake Cascade, and he's going to be targeting 2-pound perch. And that's exciting. I don't care if you're me, if you're Jim, or now Dave GENZ, buddy. That is exciting stuff when you're able to target a lake you've never been on. That there's some trophy fish in it. And I don't know, it gets the blood going knowing that there is that possibility you're going to catch a personal best.
Yeah, for me to get to Cascade Lake from home, it's 2 days drive. It's too far to make it in 1 day. So that's, but if as just a potential, I'm pretty confident I'm going to catch a 1.5 pound perch, which is still big. But some of the guys that made a trip out last year, they got one that weighed 2.6. And the rest of the perch they caught were under 2 pounds, but just the possibility of catching that big fish.
That's what it's all about.
What's Absolutely. The biggest one you've caught so far, Dave?
1.13 on Devil's Lake, North Dakota.
Yeah. So, is that place still as hot as it used to be?
No, it's been over harvested till they fished the population down. It was interesting when we first started going, and there was no limit to the amount of perch you could have, and then it went to 100, and then it went to 50, and now it's down to 20. They said we couldn't fish it out, but obviously we must have if we're down to 20 now.
Interesting. And what kind of limits do you have down there, Dave, in terms of your daily catch?
Well, I'm not sure about Idaho, to be honest with you. In Minnesota we have 30 fish limit on the perch. And I said North Dakota is down to 20. Every state is kind of is different now, but I said it was still interesting. We had a tournament on Devil's Lake years back, a trap attack we called them, and the game and fish guys stood around the guys that were fishing a tournament and told us that there was no possible way that man could fish that lake out. There was just way too many perch in there. And I said there was no limit then, and now there's limits. Some of the other things, the water level started going down.
Right.
As it was going up all the time, it kept getting better. I don't know why I got a funny noise.
I know that. Yeah, it's unfortunately I think it's reverbing out of Jim's phone. But I every once in a blue moon when you're talking, I'll click the mute. And he's got the ear. Fantastic. One thing that I'll touch on and I know Jim is a big bluegill fan as well. I went back into some of the archives, and I'm going to share a screen because there's something that you talked about in this. I think it's the Midwest Outdoors. It was a few years back, but it's all about cadence and cadence, how important it is when you're targeting bluegills. Before I play it, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, my current lure that I designed is called a drop kick, and it's just almost like a regular jig head, but you rotate the knot that you tied onto the jig so that the knot is pointing towards the point of the hook. And when you work your rod tip in a quiver motion, it makes the back of that jig kick. And some of the creatures that live in underwater world, the zooplankton, that's kind of what they have to do. They got to keep that rapid little motion to maintain. If they quit doing that, they sink. And that's a major food for our fish in the wintertime is the zooplankton, the copeds and the heterocopes. And sometimes if a fish comes close, then they can dart quickly for an inch, and then they had to sit there and quiver again or they sink. So
awesome. Have a listen. This is a quick little video just explaining how important cadence is when it comes to fishing bluegill.
What I've learned about getting these fish to bite, it's about cadence. Get that lure to bounce with a rhythmic motion. Oh, there's a dandy. By changing the cadence, you can trigger them fish into biting. I compare it to a lot like using a crankbait in the summertime. You change the style of crankbait and you go from a wobble to a cadence like this to one that goes real fast like this. And that's what we do when we're ice fishing here. We use these horizontal baits and we get a cadence going. And we can change that cadence right when the fish is down there. We could pick it up and we could slow it down. And I like just to watch my line. My line is shaking back and forth. And when that fish comes and bites it, the line stops shaking. These are some dandy bluegills. Why it pays sometimes to go back into these lakes that are a little harder to get to. Today, we have it all to ourselves. There's nobody out here but us. Now we'll get that cadence going. I know a lot of people like to use spring bobbers, but sometimes you can't pick up the speed enough on on the cadence to get to trigger them strikes. So I feel I can slow it down as slow as I want it, but I can also pick up the cadence and make it move very rapidly. It attacks the fish's lateral line. It starts up by the back of their eyes, moves down the side of their body, and it's got to feel good to them. That's another thing a lure's got to do. It's not got to look good. It's got to taste good. It's got to feel good, and that's what cadence is about. Is to making that lure feel good to the fish, so they'll come up and strike that lure.
Awesome stuff, Dave. I'll tell you. Yep. Jimmy, what do you think?
I think that's pretty cool. I got the bug to go for some bluegills now.
Yeah.
We eventually got some cold weather today and the last couple of days here. And Dave, one of the places we fished up there on the Big Rito in Beavers Bay there, when Tim Allard and Azumi and all them were there. The ice there this year, it's not even thick enough to drive a four-wheeler safely on. It just hasn't frozen. But tonight we got -18. I think they're -21 up there, and we've got that for 3 or 4 nights now. So hopefully we're gonna look at some ice, and next week I'll manage to get out there and do a little bit of damage. Even the Bay of Quinte now is just freezing now after. We had a horrible start to it down there. I don't know whether you saw the news. We had a young lad drown there. We had a plethora of people going through the ice. Yeah. Four-wheelers, skidoos. There was actually a guy went through with a truck and a trailer, and I said to a buddy of mine when he sent me the picture, I said to him, "Wow, who would bring a trailer out on the ice?" And the trailer was down in the ice with the back end sticking up, and I thought they had left it there and it has gone through. And he says to me, "Oh no, there's a truck attached to the front of it. You can't see it." Like, I thought, oh my God, like people just getting carried away with this stuff. but it's one of those things when you see someone else catching fish like that, you just get bent. You want to go. I was actually sitting here when you were doing that. I got a bunch of stuff right here for ice fishing. I was sitting looking at it, getting excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One question that Christina has, and I don't know how much fishing you've done up here in Canada, Dave, but is there a lake that you have not fished here in Canada yet that you would still love to get to?
Well, there's that bluegill lake that when I was up there with Jim, we couldn't fish it. It wasn't legal, And if that's the case, there must be big bluegills in it. So Jim can probably answer that question better than me if we can fish that now.
Yeah, that's that little lake now. You'd have to trek through the park to get to it because there's no motorized vehicles, but it's there. In fact, a guy that I'll probably go to Big Reno with next week was in there last week. He contacted me, and I took the map and I marked it all for him and everything else. And hopefully he's on, because the times that I got in there when we could get in, it was scary. It was absolutely scary, and that's where I caught the biggest sunfish I ever caught ice fishing. Was in that lake. But you caught 8 to 10 inch fish all day. Well,
long. What I've done here we've got some of our national parks here. You have no motorized vehicles, but I got an e-bike that they allow into the parks because it's it goes less than 20 miles an hour, and it's less than 100 or something else, but it's pedal assist. You got to pedal it to make it work, and I can hook my fish trap behind it and pull it into them lakes that. I'm getting too old to walk and drag something, but I can pedal that bike and get in there. So that might be something. I didn't think I could do it. Being in my 70s now, and got on this bike, and I guess once you learn how it's the fact that it pedals easy, and I can keep it going, and maybe we can do that.
I've seen some film clips of that place. It's pretty cool. Those bikes. I saw there was. I forget the girl's name now. She's a young girl from Minnesota that does a pile of ice fishing. She does a lot of videos and stuff, and it showed her and her two girlfriends heading out, and they actually had a sleigh behind one, with a couple of pop-ups on it and all that stuff and everything, and they were just chugging along across the ice on these bikes with big fat tires. Yeah, it was really cool.
And they're studded tires. It's got over 100 studs in each tire. So wow. it's you're confident, you don't feel like you're slipping and sliding. In fact, I learned at home, I come down to the driveway and then I got concrete just before the garage door. Studs don't stop good on concrete.
Yeah, they make a mess. That is true. Absolutely.
Hey Dave, I'm always trying to explain to people and getting them to understand that in the wintertime as the summertime, that fish have movements that they do, and they have over the winter, they filter their way out to the basin, and they start to come back in as it warms and stuff like that. Can you explain that to the people from your experiences you've had, exactly how it works?
Yes, there's always variables to everything, but I kind of use the weed line as my reference point. If the weed line is 10 feet and less, then the fish tend to go to the deeper water in the wintertime. If the weed line is 10 feet or more, they tend to use the weeds, especially at the beginning of the season. Then as the season progresses, these weeds start dying off. They start using up the oxygen. So now I'll go out to the sunken islands out in the middle of the lake. Just last weekend, we were out in it's a 4,000 acre lake. We were almost dead center in the middle, but there was a big flat out there with weeds growing on it, and that's where the fish were. And as it warms up, the sun gets higher in the sky, the sunlight starts penetrating the ice, then these weeds start growing under the ice, and then these fish move back shallow again. Kind of the key time is, when the water goes through the ice. You'll have the snow on it, and then it all melts, and it's all wet out there, and people say, you got to be nuts for going on top of that. Well, it's still the water still on top. That means the ice is still good. But when the water goes through, that reoxygenates all them shallow bays, and then you move back into the shallow bays. Even the dead weeds then, because the food stayed there, the zooplankton is there, and the fish go back in there to get them.
And you're huge on that when it comes to the crustaceans, the invertebrates, clopids, all that. And Dave, a lot of anglers don't see the microorganisms and how they play such a crucial role, not only for targeting the fish that we're trying to target, but targeting the fish that, of course, the fish that we are targeting are looking for. And some of the things that if you go and you have the chance and some time to go back into some of the resources that Dave has put together, you'll understand this. It's not just necessarily about the migration of the fish that you're targeting, but the fish that your fish are targeting themselves, and how that relates to forage. Dave, obviously something that Jim has talked at great length about: topographical maps and reading maps and knowing the hydro maps and how they work when it comes to drop-offs, how they're adjacent to mid-lake humps, weed beds, as you mentioned. How did that all start, and what did it look like back in the day when you embarked on looking for hydrographic maps?
Well, to start with, it was looking for depressions in the weeds. Like I said, if the weed line in the lake happens to be 15 feet, and there was a big bay and one spot was 20 feet, I'm heading to that spot because them fish are going to be in there. I think another thing that you talk about flats all the time, and flats are wide spots in the contour lines on a lake map, and they're deeper than the weed line, but shallower than the basin, and a wide spot in the contour line. And them areas hold fish in the wintertime because the burrowing insects can dig into the bottom there because it's a little firmer bottom, and some of our mayfly larvae and things actually live in the bottom for 2 years before they hatch, before they fly away. And them fish know that they're down there feeding on these things that are, they come out every prime time in the evening when the zooplankton starts raising up. Then these mayfly larvae come out of their little hiding spots, and they start feeding on that. That brings other fish into that area. So it all starts with the zooplankton really, and goes up from there.
Well, that's what you always talked about as a sticky bottom, right, Dave?
Correct. The sticky bottom area. It's not necessarily just the basin of the lake. There's the bloodworms live out in there, but when you get to the base of the break, a lot of times where you kind of find a steeper break going down into the basin, and let's say it's 30 feet deep. I want to know where 28, 29, that right at the bottom where the stuff is rolled down the hill, and that's where the burrowing insects can spend their life underwater.
Absolutely. And great question that Steve Moretti has asked, and we lost a great one in Ron Linder recently. You have taught so many of us when it comes to hardwater angling and angling in general and the pursuit of our passion. Who back in the day was your mentor, or is there someone that is still your mentor that has taught you not only to further what you're doing, further your passion, but educated you when it came to some of the stuff that you've learned along the way?
Well, it certainly was the Linders. I was probably closer to Al than I was to Ron, but both of them were instrumental in doing what I did. They did it in the summertime, and I kind of just took their what they did and put it to work in the winter. But what does it take? It takes going on the road and coming out and meeting guys like Jim and other people across the country. Al Linder told another friend of mine that was trying to start a jig business out in Lake Park, Minnesota, and he was talking to Al, and Al said, "Well, Mike, nobody's going to come to Lake Park to buy these jigs."
That's hilarious.
And and I was just told to me, and it went click. I got to get out, get out of the garage where I was building these fish houses and get on the road if you want to spread the word. And And
That's awesome. Now, when it comes to the fish houses, and I have a little video that we're going to be showing, but tell us sort of what has brought us. I mean, obviously the fish trap came first, and then it got adopted or taken over by Clam, and you've worked together closely with Clam, and you have, revolutionized how we fish HardWater. No longer are we sitting on 5-gallon pails out in the open wind and weather. You came up with this concept of the pullover hut. Tell us where that all came from.
Well, kind of interesting. My dad and my uncle were road construction workers. I was the baby of the family, and when I was growing up, my dad didn't work in the wintertime. He got unemployment, and him and my uncle went fishing every day. And they had a 1952 Buick. That was about the first car I remember. It had that big straight 8 engine in the front and no trunk. So they had to build a couple of little fish houses that fit in the back. And my uncle built the first flip over. Well, at that time you could only use one line, and you were using a minnow and a bobber. So how much room did you need in there to have a hole in a bobber? And he bent the pipes around a 55-gallon drum and sewed a canvas on the top. So that was, it's been in my life since the early 50s. And, as I decided I was going to make my living in the fishing industry, that's another whole story. But I love it. That was, that I started building these fish houses, and I had to convince my wife that she was going to sew these on her home sewing machine, and I got my 2 daughters to help assemble them in the garage. So it was really a family deal. They'd gladly assemble the fish houses on Saturday for piecework. You paid them so much a house, then they had money to go roller skating on Saturday night, or at Christmas time they had money to go buy Christmas presents. And so, I don't feel like I was slave laboring by no means. They were getting back. Their friends would come over and help put fish houses together so they could have money too.
Yeah, they got paid, but no one saw the chain on her ankle in the garage.
That is such an incredible story. Well, listen, to commemorate that, it basically has been 40 years of the fish trap, and happy birthday when it comes to this, and to show our respects to what the fish trap has meant to us and Clam Outdoors. I'm going to play a little video that explains everything in great detail.
"40 years ago, Dave GENZ had an idea that would change the sport of ice fishing. The Fish Trap Flip-Over Portable Ice Shelter. Although the flip-over shelter has evolved to many styles and models, the basic concept remains strikingly similar to Dave's original idea for a fish house that offered protection and mobility.
Mobility is the real key to catching more fish through the ice, and when it's just came a long ways over the years. Well, they were wooden to start with. We used to take the old sleds that the kids rode down the hills, and we'd staple them to the bottom to make them more slippery so they'd pull through the snow. I was a lot younger than 2, of course, and drug this house for many miles across the lake, and going from fisherman to fisherman, and sit them down on it, flip it over, show them their hook on their sonar, or on my sonar, and then move on to the next guy. That's how it got started, slow. But the original concept was about, staying warm, so getting out of the wind. The white houses originally were so you could see your sonar in there a lot better.
Oh, sure.
The new sonar didn't have a very bright light like the new Vexilars do. So, it just, it's been a fun ride going through all this, from, doing stuff in the maintenance shop where I used to work to having real engineers out, designing things, and you can come with a sketch of something and they can build something now that looks just like it. It's just the things that happen along the way. And we still got more memories to make.
To celebrate the 40th anniversary of the original fish trap, Clam has developed a limited edition series of flip-over shelters. A Yukon XL, a Kenai Pro Thermal, and the one-man house that is most like the original model, the Scout. With a retro look and feel, these shelters have all the features of the modern clamfish traps. Thermal skin with Tribond technology to keep heat in and use less propane. Easy-to-use pole systems, large pole release tab for easy setup, heavy-duty tubs to stand up to the punishment and rigors of ice angling, adjustable seat for all-day comfort, side symmetry door system for easy in and out on the Yukon XL Thermal. But the original idea by Dave GENZ is one that has stood the test of time and will be here for years to come. Watch the full story at clamoutdoors.com.
Awesome stuff, Dave. And one of the things that I truly loved about that piece is there's still more memories to come and be made. And I think it's a great question that Dave Spicer has asked. What do you think, or what do you see as the next breakthrough when it comes to ice angling technology?
Well, I think we were, clothing is what's really is the most recent thing. We can endure this cold weather now with all these clothing, and now, the Canadians were definitely first in the float suit division, but now we got a lot of float suits that are made that are very comfortable. It's kind of funny. I had a conversation with somebody today about a warmer. We don't need a cooler out on the ice. We need a warmer. We need a way to keep our sandwiches from freezing and our bait from freezing. And the battery technology has moved on, and I think we're really close to having a cooler that you set the thermostat at 40 and it just stays at that. So things electric, the electric augers have obviously became very popular now. You hardly hear a gas auger running anymore out there on the ice. In fact, that's kind of what I say every time I hear, what's that strange noise?
That's hilarious.
And that's all you heard years ago was them augers running out on the ice.
Yep.
Absolutely. Jim, what do you see as the new technology, the new age, the new idea coming down?
Well, I think, there's always a thing out there to me for new things to put on the end of your line. That's one of the things that really drives the fishing industry. And, when I heard Dave talking about the silk earlier when we were talking and stuff like that, we'll get him to talk about that in a minute here. But, stuff on the end of your line. But the augers to me is the really big deal. Dave, Dave Chong, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave. He was saying the other day he went up above Toronto, up by Georgian Bay to fish with a buddy. I think he was up just below Perry Sound or something. And he said to me, "I'm out on the ice and I'm sitting there," and he says, "I'm all alone." And he says, "I look around and there's two other people have come out and they've cut their holes with electric augers." He didn't even know they were there, because he didn't have that gas auger running. And
yeah.
I mean, and it's true. And I really think that this bit with the batteries, the lithium batteries, electric augers, there's so many good ones out there. And I'm sure someone's going to have something better. It'll happen. It'll come along. But I think like the mobility and the tools, because I know when I started ice fishing and Dave was teaching me so much every year that there was still a thing like, you'd take your skimmer for the hole and you'd bang it on the ice and it would break. Everything that you touched would break if it was minus 30, and things like that don't happen now. You've heard me say, Scotty, that the industry responded. The industry, the manufacturers have given us stuff to make ice fishing so much more, so much more comfortable, so much easier. And in turn, it makes us more successful. Like, when Dave talked about being over there on those lakes with the perch that have gotten fished down a bit, I'm sure a lot of that has to do just with the equipment guys have now. They fish more comfortably. They don't go out for an hour and freeze and leave. They can fish all day, and they're fishing as efficiently as they can, or as we think we can. I'm sure there's always something new to come, but I'm always big on comfort, mobility, that type of stuff, because that's what makes you want to be out there. You don't want to be sitting there, you're frozen to death, you're trying to get one of your hands to warm up because it got cold in the water, whatever. You don't need that stuff. When you're comfortable, you're having a good time. That's when you'll love ice fishing, and you'll bring your kids, get the family involved, the whole deal, because like they aren't out there. Kids don't want to go sit on a bucket and freeze to death. And I don't either. I used to, but I don't have to, so you don't do it now.
Absolutely.
Well, here's something kind of interesting that, as time we've kind of blamed, the Vexlar for hurting the fish populations, and then came the underwater cameras, and we ought to ban them cameras. Now we got the live scope, so we can check around her. It's 360. All that is really good, but that's not really what changed everything. What changed everything was the power auger. Take that auger away and go back to chopping holes. All them other tools don't mean much anymore.
It's so true. So true. When it comes to ease, and of course, as Jim mentioned, comfort out on the ice. Steve's asked, what is one of the easiest of the clams to pull by hand for people who walk great distances? Which one would you recommend, Dave?
Well, the Kenai is probably the one right now. The fish trap and the the Legacy and the Kenai are the easiest to pull. One of the most popular houses, though, that we've got, I think Jim's probably even got one of these. It used to be called the Guide. Now it's called the Nanook, and it's actually a 2-person house. Which, if 2 people pull it, it's really easy. But you can take out one seat and turn it into a 1-person house also. And it has been the #1 selling house that Clam has produced. And it's you got to keep the weight down. Everybody wants a giant fish house that doesn't weigh anything. Well, that just isn't gonna happen.
No. I remember the first one I ever had you gave me was the old Yukon with the wooden seat with the carpet over it. Remember? With that.
Yeah, well, that goes back a long ways.
I know, but I used to I've lugged that thing, Dave. Literally, like I've lugged it through the forest for a mile. I'm lucky I was a big boy. I could pull something like that, But one of the key things I found, if you're going to pull something too, and I don't know if everybody out there is doing it, but when you add a longer rope, it gets much easier to pull it. You put on 15, 20 feet of rope, you'd be surprised how easily you pull something like that, as opposed to like the little loop that comes off it by hand just for moving it around. You put 15, 20 feet of rope over your shoulder, and you can go, or around your waist if you're walking on the water, just keep walking. It's amazing how far you can go.
Amen.
And even behind your ATV or snowmobile, if you put a long rope on it and get it way behind you, you don't fill it full of snow, and it just works a lot better.
Great advice. Speaking of electric augers, is there one that you prefer, Dave?
Well, I'm using a Milwaukee drill with the Clam drill plate, and most of the time I'm drilling 6-inch holes. I wish I knew a spot where the fish didn't fit out of a 6-inch hole, because I'd get a bigger otter and spend a lot of time there. And
the wood's incredible. Dave, I have to thank you. Back in the day, this is I think it's as old as the hills, but I don't know if you recall that model, but this is the GENZ stick. It has been a go-to. I use it always for my flutter spoons. It's got great backbone, but it was the very first ice fishing rod I ever purchased. It has stood up, I don't want to say how many years, but are you a spin guy? Are you a inline reel guy, or what kind of setup do you prefer?
Yeah, I'm still using a spinning rod, and not that I don't have a bait caster. And back in my lake trout rod was a bait caster. It's amazing how now I went to a medium action Legacy rod and a spinning reel and 8-pound test, and that's what I'm fishing lake trout with. Years ago I would have to put heavier line on the net, but heck, when you fish, a lot of 2 and 3 pound test line, 8-pound feels pretty dang strong, and you can land any size fish on it. It just takes a little longer, but that's not all bad.
Amen. Amen. If there was one thing that you could see in the future when it comes to stuff that you should have in your tackle box, is there anything that some of our audience could take in from advice from two gentlemen that have been on some serious hard water over the years? Is there a must-have in your tackle box?
Well, I think right now we talked about this new silky that we have put together in the last couple of years. Kind of interesting that it was developed by a friend of mine who lives in Sacramento. And he doesn't ice fish that much, but he was a jeweler by profession, and he has tools that, obviously smaller than I ever had. And he was trying to, every time he'd see me, he'd ask, well, and he'd make different things for me, and they were just ridiculously, almost funny that he thought he could catch fish on them. And then one time he comes home and goes ice fishing with me, and he's got this silky, and I went, wow, I can catch fish on that. And it's nothing more than real silk. Silk is a natural. It's made by the silkworm, and it's actually a protein. And I said it absorbs water, and and that's going to progress into much bigger things. Right now, it's just a jig trailer, we call it, for panfish. But I guarantee you that is going to move on into winter bigger lures, and it's going to end up in the bass market too. I can just see it happening.
That's awesome. Great. Jim, what about yourself?
Well, I got one thing, and I got to tell you, right in the very beginning, I still have some here. I bought a whole, when you see those boxes on the counters of baits. Well, years ago when Dave introduced me to all this, he introduced me to Fat Boys, and the little original Fat Boy in the glow right there. I have my little box here that I bring on the ice inside my jacket pocket, and I have about 20 of those in there. The glow red ones you used to use, all different sizes, like the size 10, 8, 6 hooks, for whatever you're doing. And that with a maggot is still, to me, is virtually untouchable when it comes to catching, like bluegills, pumpkin seeds, and a lot of other fish too. And the number of times that I've gone to places to fish for walleyes and fished with the biggest Fat Boy that they had with 2 or 3 maggots. I think, Dave, I think you called them shish kebabs when you used to put 3 or 4 on in the middle,
or like 8 or 10.
yeah, it looked like a prime rib roast on the back of a Fat Boy to a fish. But those little maggots, the number of walleyes we've caught with those little jigs are just incredible. I think it just gets down to, if they're not really active, it's something that they'll always eat. It's just like, anything else to do with fishing. But at the same time, if the fish are really active, they're going to eat it, because like what they're doing is they're eating. And as long as they see it, they're going to eat it. And it's amazing. There's so many things. I don't know how many guys out there fish with maggots, but I remember one day going to a little lake with Dave, and we got there, and it was about an hour and a half from my house, and we realized that we'd forgot the maggots back at the house. And this is when I lived down by Brockville, and we went back and got the maggots before we fished. And then there's it's just how important that they are to my fishing. And even if I'm fishing a jig and wrap for whitefish or something or whatever, it could be for lake trout or whatever, I'll have like 8 or 10 maggots on that thing, on the front hooks, on the belly hook. I'll have them all. It's just, there's something about a maggot that fish just, like, when they get there, it's, oh, that's food. They eat it, there's something to it. And I got to tell Dave a funny story about talking about going ice fishing. I swore once that I would never go ice fishing if I couldn't have a flasher, if I couldn't have my Vexilar with me. So we do this big ice tour evening with Chong, Will Wegman, myself at the Gagnon Sports in Oshawa, which I think you've probably been in. And I show a guy my unit in the parking lot, the Vexilar in the parking lot, and he's looking at it, and he says to me, "Oh, do you want me to put this back in the truck?" And I said, "Yeah." So he opens the door and he puts it in the truck. But he hadn't turned it off. So in the morning, Will and Dave and I get up and we head up to Lake Simcoe. I got to Lake Simcoe, got out there, we drilled the holes, we knew right where we were going. Dave already had the spot from the day before. We get out there, I drill the holes, I got my 2 holes, I put the transducer in the hole and go click, and nothing happens. It's dead. Dead as a doorknob. We couldn't find another battery, and I have them too. I have spare batteries that I bring. I didn't bring them because we were really doing a seminar, not on an ice fishing deal, and we were going to fish for a few hours. I put everything back in the fish trap and left. I went to the hotel early. I wasn't going to fish without a Vexilar.
Incredible. So outside of battery, Dave, is there anything you can't have too much of when you're out in the hard water?
Well, I'm going to say this because I got 5% life left on my battery on the phone. So I could go away at any time here now. I said that's what's nice about all of our batteries now, because we can keep our phone charged up. If I knew how to plug this thing in, I'd plug it in, but I'm stranded in the vehicle myself, and I got my daughter's phone. So, so just in case it dies out of me, thank you for having me. It's been really fun talking with you. And now let's just keep going.
Absolutely. One of the things, Dave, that you revolutionized and emphasized early on, and I'm not sure what it was that triggered you on this, was downsizing your baits when it came to the hard water season. What made you go that route?
Well, just time on the water. You got red lines down there, and you can't catch them. And it just seemed like downsizing was the thing to do, and also putting on that fresh bait that really makes a lot of difference. Something I've been talking about recently and forcing myself to do is when I'm changing holes, before I leave my old hole, I freshen my bait. I put new maggots on, straighten out your piece of plastic, because when you get to the new hole, if there's a fish down there, you're going to throw in whatever you got. It might be dead maggots from yesterday, if that's the way and that will definitely put more fish on the ice if you freshen your bait. That first drop down a new hole that's when the biggest fish is caught. The most active one comes up and hits it. So that's a tip that we can all get better at.
I'll ask both of you the same question. If there was a go-to bait, if you had one bait that you could use for the rest of your hard water angling career, what would that bait be?
You go first, Dave, in case we lose you.
Well, yeah.
That's
in my case right now. Well, in my case right now would be a drop kick. The drop kick is the fat boy but it's made of tungsten now, so we changed the name to drop kick.
Yep.
And it comes in multi sizes, and the more maggots I could put on that, at times it takes more, but that's what it would be. It would be a jig if it was summertime.
Yeah. Jim, I know I've asked you, but go ahead and answer the same question.
Yeah, I'd have to go the same. If we're talking panfish, you got to go with some kind of a little jig. Something I know I've done in the past is use the smallest size of all the jigging minnow type things and hanging the maggots on the treble. If they're really active and there's some crappies around too, sometimes you'll get them to hit that. But I might start with that a couple of times if I don't see anything, and do the old pound it on the bottom to hope I bring something in before I'm going to move again. But definitely what Dave said. I mean, I don't have this. That's in my pocket when I'm on the lake. I don't want to turn it up; they'll all fall out. But man, there's nothing in there that's more than like an inch and a quarter long, and that to me is just it's what I do when I ice fish for panfish. You use little weeny things like that. Live maggots whenever you can get them. I know Dave used to come up and he'd have dyed maggots that were yellow and red and everything. And there was days when it made a difference. But the one thing he always used to tell me, they got to have the juice on them. They got to have juice on them if they're not fresh there.
I've seen that video. And Dave, I want to properly thank you for coming on. So before your phone dies, Jim, thanks so much. You and I can continue on to end this, but to properly thank you on behalf of CFN and everybody that's been watching. If you do have any questions for Dave that didn't get asked or answered during the broadcast, by all means, put them in the comments and we will try and get to them. But Dave, thanks so much for all that you've done, not just tonight, but in years past. You're a true pioneer, my friend. And I know I say it on behalf of myself and probably Jim as well. I can't thank you enough for all you've done.
Well, hopefully I get to do it for a bunch more years, because I'm not going to quit till I can't.
There you go.
Amen.
From the heart, pal. Thanks so much, buddy. I love you always.
All righty.
Take care.
It's been really fun really fun visiting with you two guys.
Thanks,
Dave.
Appreciate
We'll talk
it.
soon.
Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck.
Get a 2-pounder.
Dude, as I said, we have the luxury of speaking to these people before we go live, and I had him a little bit longer than yourself, and I understand, Jim, now why you're so fond of him. He is. Yeah. He's like a salt of the earth, man.
Yeah, and he's the kind of person that, the old paying it forward bit.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah.
It just works. It's real. It's something that you have to pay attention to. Like he talked about his uncle and his dad. He's talked to me several times about them, and it's just one of those things that it just makes it so much easier for me to do the stuff that I do, because somebody treated me right, and it's just really cool. And hey, if I don't answer any questions, everybody that's still here, I still can't get on the CFN page. It will not let me in.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine come over. He can't figure it out. Tammy had already done a whole bunch of stuff. She had, deleted the page and brought it back and all kinds of things, and he did everything to it. But I've got 2 now. I've got 2 things that I can't go to, and we have no idea. So I have a guy in Kingston supposed to give me a call. Apparently, he is like a Facebook guru. If there's something wrong, and I don't mean, my buddy told me. He's the guy. He'd be the buddy. He's the guy that He's the guy that knows the stuff for real. Yeah. So it's hopefully I get it fixed. I'll have to go back. Yeah, I can get in through a back door or anything. If I see if someone's commented to me, I can click on that comment right to it. I can go through it. So as long as I have some way to find my way in without just going to CFN and going to it.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Absolutely sucks. Great question. Yeah, I can't figure it out either. Tony asked a great question. How old would Dave be?
Figure it's 74.
Yeah, I was going to say in early 70s anyway. But, you see him in some of the videos and not that long ago. And I tell you, the spunk that gentleman has is quite remarkable.
Well, he's really lucky because he stayed pretty good.
Yeah.
But, it just goes to show, I mean, the guy walks around all winter on the ice.
Yeah.
We talk about when you get older, exercising, moving, the thing that's why I do what I do today.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dave's not a very big guy. Dave's a pretty small guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pretty small guy. He's like 5'8" maybe. And he's just, he's when you said salt of the earth, he's double salt of the earth.
Oh, dude, he's such a down-to-earth guy. And that's really the first time I've met him sort of live. Steve Moretti, we appreciate all the amazing guests you get on the show, including the regulars like Jason, Jim, and Lawrence. I can't take any of the credit for this, Steve. It's all that guy right there that got Dave here and some of the great guests.
I'll never get this camera bit right.
But one thing before we leave you guys, I wanted to give you some more Dave GENZ, because I said you can't get enough of it. And he spoke about it tonight, what his go-to was and what he liked when it comes to a presentation. So, you know what? On that note, I'm going to leave you with that video. Jim, thanks so much for getting this all set up with Dave. It's yet another box I get to tick off when it comes to the bucket list, and can't thank you enough for all you do, bud.
Well, you got the message about the other one that I was talking to, eh? We'll do when the bass season comes.
Yes, absolutely.
Excuse me. Oh, COVID. Oh.
Yeah. So on that note, here's a tip from Angling Buzz, exactly what Dave GENZ was talking about. Thanks for all of you for tuning in tonight, and we will see you real soon. Monday, I believe, is our next broadcast, and until then, enjoy.
Normally,
guys.
when we fish a piece of plastic on a jig, we want to slide the plastic all the way on there. That's what we've learned in the summertime. What I discovered with ice fishing is that I like to take the plastic and just start it onto the hook and get the plastic sticking straight up in the air. And then you jig that in the water and move it up and down, and that'll catch you sometimes more fish than if you put it on all the way. Another thing that we do Well, that was basically a horizontal bait that we fished vertical. Now we're going to take a vertical bait here, one that hangs like this, and we're going to hook this little poly on there. Hook it right through the end, like so. Then I slide it around the jig to the back of the hook. Then I turn it and hook the hook in it again so that it hangs horizontal in the water. And look at that. You barely wiggle that thing. And look at that. Look at that tail shaking on there. You put that down on the bottom and raise it slowly up the bottom, jigging like that. And it's, imitating a bloodworm coming out of the bottom, and it's a deadly way to catch a few fish, especially in the middle of the day.